My name is Khalidah Shaheed. I am a student at UMass Lowell. I'm enrolled in a labor studies course, and I'm here with Tom Raiche.
How are you, Khalidah?
Good, how are you?
Very good, very good.
Great, great. So it is my understanding that you work with the MVCLC.
Yes, it's the Merrimack Valley Central Labor Council, and affiliated with the AFL-CIO, the statewide, and there's 6 of them in different regions of Massachusetts. Obviously, we're the Merrimack Valley, and then the North Shore, Greater Boston, et cetera, all around the state. And we represent different locals that belong to our labor council. So whether it be the teachers union, whether it be Raytheon workers, whether it be truck drivers, all different locals, different industries, all belong to this Central Labor Council for the common good of unionism and moving labor forward in the right direction, hopefully.
Great. How many do you represent?
I think we broke it down when you break down all the different locals and how many different members they have. I think it's like 35,000 union members between, and we represent from like Chelmsford all the way to Newburyport, following the Merrimack River, and we go as far south as Burlington. So it's a big footprint, big area.
It is.
Yep.
What's the goal, would you say?
One of the statements that we try to think of our mission statement, and there's been some kicked around, but like, when no worker stands alone. Like, for example, this past summer when the gas workers were locked out, they had a dispute with the company, National Grid, and they were locked out. And we stood in solidarity with them, even though, different industries, all different unions, but we all stuck together to help in their cause. And we'd go to the picket line, we walked the picket line with them. We went to different events, would bring them water and stuff. And we'd go to different events and promote they were locked out. And we have a radio show, Paul Georges, who's the head of the Lowell Teachers Union. He's also the head of the Labor Council, the Merrimack Valley Labor Council. He has a radio show on Monday mornings, and we used to have the locked out workers call us up and give us an update on what's going on as far as negotiations. And it was 6 months. They were out of work for 6 months. And that was just, they wanted to work, but the company was playing hardball and said, nope, they locked the doors and said, until you agree to this, you can't come back. And it didn't get over. Well, 6 months, it was, I think the end of January, it kind of came together and they went back to work. But it was a long haul. But as far as the Central Labor Council, we all stuck together. That was the goal as far as individual workers and individual local different unions don't feel alone.
Right.
We're all in this together as far as the union movement and labor, organized labor.
It's moral support, it's verbal, it's
yeah,
advocacy a little bit.
And it show us solidarity, it's, even though different industries, whether it be the building trades, the carpenters, the painters, but then teachers unions, even though they're totally different industries, they're kind of the same goal,
right,
as far as sticking together and trying to get the best for their members.
How long have you been with them?
I come up here in 2011. I was with the airlines. I was with Northwest Airlines. I started there in the 80s. And I was a union rep all through the years at Logan Airport, Terminal E. And then in April of 2009, wow, 10 years ago. Yeah, we merged. We started to merge with Delta, nice. And we moved from Terminal E over to Terminal A at Logan Airport, and that was when, slowly but surely, we turned into Delta eventually.
Right. What are some of the things like you accomplished with the MCLB?
With the Merrimack Valley Labor Council,
yes.
I think one of the biggest things, we were able to contact our elected officials, whether it be newly appointed Congresswoman Laurie Trahan or state senators or state reps, as far as different bills in the State House that are moving forward. And I think once the Labor Council, because the politicians know that the Labor Council represents a large member of their constituents. So, like I said, 35,000. So it adds a little, as opposed to a local, that has maybe 1,000 members, saying, geez, we'd really like you to support this bill. But as a Labor Council, it just has a lot more influence on the elected officials. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're able to do. But also, we do a lot of stuff. I do a lot of community service to show people in Lowell and the surrounding communities different stuff that the labor movement is willing to do. Like we do a lot with the Merrimack Valley Food Bank, as far as raising money and getting food distributed by different people and stuff. But it's all about solidarity. It's all about the union sticking together,
right,
and helping the common good for social justice and whatever.
And you mentioned that you work with Delta before, well, the airlines as a whole.
The airlines as a whole, yeah. And Northwest was a unionized carrier. I was in the machinist union, in the International Association of Machinists, and we had to have a vote because the merger was there. We were union, Delta was not, and we had a vote, and this was like nationwide. The vote wasn't just Logan Airport; it was all over the country, and it was a close vote, but we lost by 500, and then that was it. So now I was working for an airline without the union representation, without a contract that we used to have. We were used to having a contract. Here's the contract.
Yes.
This is what we do. This is what it says we do. And working in an environment where there isn't a contract, it's kind of willy-nilly. I mean, the policy changes by depending on who the manager is that day.
Wow, I was gonna say, what was the experience?
It was tough. It was tough
Yeah.
being just seeing the operation run that way, because the contract gives you a structure.
Yes.
Okay, this is what happens when this happens, as far as overtime and stuff like that. But in a non-union, you're almost like an employee at will, and you lose a lot of your job protection too. You can be terminated, and then unjustly. But what is your recourse to try to fight that? And if you have a contract and you're a union employee, there's a process that goes through it, as far as was the termination process followed through, and how do I get back, or how do I get an appeal to get back to work, saying that whatever I did wasn't as bad, or so-and-so did the same thing 2 years ago and he wasn't terminated, why am I being terminated? That type of, but in a situation where you don't have a union,
Right.
those rules aren't there anymore.
How would you describe the attitudes of the workers, knowing that they don't have that type of protection?
Fearful. It creates a lot of favoritism. You know that who the manager is and who the power guy is. And obviously, you're not going to upset him, even though you're right. You're not going to upset the person in charge because you're an employee at will.
And then you work with Delta, and Delta is a union.
No, Delta's non-union.
They're not a union.
Non-union,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Wow. Okay.
And so it was a different environment. Eventually we assimilated. A lot of my friends that I worked with at Northwest are still there.
Okay.
And they just, it's just really busy and you work it. And see, I got active in the union because I was a safety guy. I broke my wrist at work, and pretty bad. And I just started asking questions about, I don't want this to happen to somebody else. So I started looking into different work procedures and stuff, and on how we can make the workplace safer. So then I got very active as I was a safety chairman. And it was a partnership between the union and management. It worked out really good. And that's how I got active in the union through this being the safety chairman. And then when we went to Delta, they had a whole different situation as far as who the safety person was, and it was part of management. And it just changed. The whole environment changed.
Right. I understand you were the organizer of workers
Right.
at Delta. So can you explain to me something like your...
Well, leading up to the vote, I was trying to talk to non-union workers who work for Delta, like why a union is important. Why do we need this in the work environment? And that was part of my story. I'd talk about different stuff that happened at Northwest Airlines and why a union was in place and why we had a contract. That situation was, a lot of it's conflict resolution. How do you handle conflict resolution if there's no policy in place? And I mean, Delta has their own set of rules, but it's not a partnership between the union. And so what I was doing, I found myself, like I said, an organizer. I was trying to explain to different Delta members why a union is important. And a lot of them came from homes or environments where they didn't know anything about a union. Like, why do I need this? And I'd have to explain, listen, this is why it's important for us to stick together as far as getting raises, as far as eliminating favoritism, having some sort of seniority structure. So that's what it was. As an organizer, I was pretty much trying to inform these Delta employees why a union is important.
That's good. And you said you lost.
Yeah, we lost by 500 votes. Well, it was the whole nationwide, so everyone's voting from LA to Boston. And Atlanta was Delta's hub, and they had like thousands and thousands of employees. So they kind of carried the vote, and we lost by, that was back in 2010, and we lost by 500. Like I said, it was 400 and something. So now, okay, now what,
Right.
And when I talked to different management people, and I was able to retire from the airlines. And so it worked out. And then I come up here.
How long were you?
And I really enjoyed it up here too. But I mean, I worked at Logan Airport, and I lived in Saugus, Massachusetts, which is right on Route 1, right north of. So I was never up here. I went to school in New Hampshire. I just feel like the first time I was ever, I can't believe I'm saying this in public, the first time I was ever on the Lowell Connector. I've lived in Massachusetts my whole life. The first time I was ever on the Lowell Connector was when I came up here when I was like 53. I was just never
found any reason.
I just go, Lowell, I know where it is, but but I've really enjoyed it. It's a pretty cool city. I enjoy the concerts. I enjoy the folk festival. There's a lot going on. I enjoy the college.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've been to a couple hockey games, and I go to the Spinners games. It's really, there's a lot going on.
There is. That's great.
I tell my friends back in Saugus that. I'm telling you, come on up. Yeah.
Right. So do you think the attitudes of workers in like mass, or I guess you could say, the airport, is it different than the attitudes of the workers here? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I find the difference mostly in the industries,
Right.
Right. But I think we all kind of, and we talk about this at the Labor Council. Like, one of the things that the teachers are working on is called Fund Our Future. And it's talking about getting more money, allocating more money from the state budget to the school systems, whether it be higher ed all the way down to elementary. And one of the issues with the building trades is wage theft. How what's happening is non-union contractors hire people off the street, and they're able to underbid because they're not paying the union wages that another contractor is paying. So there's a bill called the wage theft bill to make sure that contractors have like workman's comp,
right.
Health insurance and all that, and they're not undercutting the others. So anyway, what we talked about is how it's important for the building trades, individual union members, and the teachers, which are totally different industries, but how they should work together on each other's pet projects. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah, it's like, because the teachers are very advocate about the Fund Our Future to fix our schools and, more money for early ed training and early ed schools and stuff. And the building trade guys are very adamant about, listen, we can't have, they use the term gypsies, but people coming in down here working like under the table and doing work, they're able to underbid the people that play by the rules. So it's not fair that the guys playing by the rules aren't getting the jobs because they can't underbid these people that aren't paying what they're paying. Legally, right?
Interesting.
So that's what I find, as far as getting the two industries to work together, and it's a common, a common goal. It's a lot of, I find myself explaining this to a lot of people. And I used to hear this at the airport a lot, like why a union is important. And I just, get right down to the basics and say, listen, do you want a voice in your workplace? And that's pretty,
That's important.
do you want to have a say on what's going on?
Right.
Because if you don't have a collective voice, you really don't have a say. And that goes back to the bread and roses strike, which is, and I didn't know,
Roses.
no, but that's another thing. I didn't know that much. I heard of it, the bread and roses strike, how in 1912, the mill workers in Lawrence were forced to take a pay cut, and they all stuck together and walked out, made a decision. And I came up to Lowell leading up to that 100th year anniversary, so it was a big deal. But there was all different immigrants in Lawrence at the time that all worked at the mills, and they stuck together, even though they were all different nationalities.
Right.
And reading about that, and some of the quotes about management talking about the strikers were quotes that people use today, oh, those greedy,
Right.
But they stuck together and they eventually won. And it was just amazing how they just, against all odds, stuck together and were able to get the changes they wanted to see in the mills.
Right.
And that was the beginning. One of the early things, then it went to Lowell and all around, but just as far as having a collective voice in the workplace can make a difference.
Yes.
And that's what I think unions are.
Right.
I learned, through working at the airport and doing different stuff with the Labor Council.
A group of voices is
Right.
ways heavier than just
right.
one single voice.
And that's, and that's it, collective voices. And, there's all different books on it and,
Right.
examples of strikes over the years. But
Yes.
yeah. And we have to, and I used to do this at the airport a lot, remind guys that what we have today as far as work benefits, people fought for.
Right.
Some people died for. To make a stand and say, listen, we want fair wages, we want overtime, time off. I mean, back in the mills, back in the early 1900s, there was no rules. They'd just work, sweatshops, sun up to sundown. And,
Eventually, you got to think about your security. You got to think
Right.
about your health
Right.
in these mills. Right.
I remember hearing a story of, they were talking about the mill workers back in, obviously, in Lowell, back in the early 1900s. And they said, because of the machinery being so loud, if you worked in the mill pretty much for 2 years straight, you pretty much lost your hearing. I mean,
Right.
what? But that's the way it was. I mean, child labor.
Right.
You've seen the pictures of 8-year-old kids working a machine. So we've come a long way.
We've come along. You wouldn't hear about that now.
No,
Yeah.
no. There's laws in place.
Right.
But the reason those laws were in place is because somebody stood up and
Yeah.
said, wait a sec, this isn't right.
Definitely fought for.
But yeah, I mean, back then it was all about the profit margin. And
Now
But-
there's more speaking. There's more.
Right.
We want this. What can you do? There's more action.
yeah.
That's great.
Or at least negotiation. At least listen,
Negotiation, exactly.
give and take. Management wants, obviously,
That's great.
their bottom line is profit. And the workers are like, wait a sec,
Right.
Can we have profit sharing? Like that's like Market Basket does it, which is a big deal.
And what got you interested in this? I mean,
I-
you spent a lot of time and
As I got involved at the airlines, I didn't plan on this,
Right.
but I got involved in the airlines and I began to go to more and more different labor events, and I just became more and more active in it. And then politically I got active, and then I found myself at labor events that turned into political events, or vice versa, and it just got me going. It's like, wait a sec, who's speaking up for the worker? Who's speaking up for the guy that punches a clock?
Right.
This guy doesn't seem like he cares about workers as much as he cares about, taking care of the industry, the wealthy, and that's going on today. We could talk about it now as far as the income inequality. I mean, wages are stagnant, production's up, and
Right.
profits are through the roof.
Right. So,
But people's wages, I saw it at the airport. Everyone had 2 or 3 jobs.
wow.
Just, they weren't getting paid enough, so they, after working at the airlines, they worked as a sky cap. It's like, wait, didn't I work with you? Yeah, this is my other job.
And so these jobs at the airlines, they were highly skilled, would you say, or would you think that
Yeah,
anyone can get hired?
Yeah, highly skilled to a point. I mean, obviously it's baggage and freight,
Right.
but yeah, there's a skill level because it's so dangerous.
Right.
I mean, you got airplanes with engines and everything's signed because you can't hear anything when you're on the ramp. You have mufflers on.
Oh, wow.
You had mufflers on your ears, and you can't hear anything. So it's all sign language.
And so what were some of the problems you saw at Delta? Like, what did you say, you know what, hey, let's unionize because I'm seeing that
Yeah,
this and this
I
and
think
this.
the different safety issues I saw, like why are you trying to do this job with 3 people when you know it takes 5? That type of thing. And if you work fast, somebody usually gets hurt.
Right.
If you're rushing around, when you're rushing around trying to do something. And at the airport, it's,
Everything's moving.
yeah,
so fast,
everything,
especially Logan
and
Airport.
one close call, and I saw some stuff. I mean, I saw some awful stuff. People getting hurt on the ramp.
And they didn't have a union before you
Delta
came.
never
Delta
did
never
on the
did.
ramp, but the pilots are unionized.
Huh.
Yeah, but the ticket agents and the ramp workers, like I was, were never unionized. But they're talking about it now. They're trying to,
That's good.
but we'll see. I mean, it's management.
It's important. You said the pilots were unionized.
The
but
pilots and the flight attendants are trying to be unionized too with Delta, but they're up against a struggle too, because the company doesn't want it.
Right. Why do you think that is?
I don't know if it's a question of sharing power. I don't know. I mean, the pilots are unionized for Delta, but the rest of the workers, and they
Just workers.
well, yeah, and they trying to unionize, but the way it is you have to get cards signed, you have to show an interest to get an election, and that's a process. I mean, back in 2010, Delta worked very hard to make sure that the union didn't get it. They had a room with all sorts of movies and free food, and said, you don't need a union, our doors are open. And it was like,
It's convincing.
oh yeah, if you didn't know any different.
Exactly.
If somebody got caught talking to me, because I was the union rep, the one promoting, the organizer, I was the union rep that was promoting it, the next day that the manager would call that kid in the office, say, what are you doing talking to Tom? What are you guys talking about? You talking about that union stuff?
Seemed very,
It's very intimidating.
yeah, very intimidating. I had a job when I was 16. It was my very first job. I didn't know anything about unions,
Yeah.
but once the store opened, it was the first store in Boston.
Yeah.
There were union picketers outside, like, we should unionize, we should unionize. And the company would send us emails, advising us that it's, so I understand how people just don't know.
They
And
don't
they don't
know.
know any better, and they need a voice, they need you.
And if the manager tells you,
Yeah.
it's very intimidating, especially if you're a new hire.
Yeah.
I don't want to upset management. No, What store was it?
It was Primark.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Primark. So it was
Primark in downtown Crossing.
that was the
I remember
first
that.
store to come
I
to
think
the
I was
United
at that rally.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, they were like, well, I thought they were going to stay neutral, and
Right.
the company itself was, saying, these are the benefits, but these are the disadvantages. You
Right.
need to know the disadvantages. So, me being so young, I was just,
Oh, you didn't know.
I didn't know any better, which leads me to my next question. These ages of the Delta workers, were they
All
older,
ages,
young?
but
All
there were
ages?
older guys that were anti-union because they were trained for years
Oh, right.
because management, kind of told them, you don't need a union, you don't need a union. And then you had young kids who were, parents were immigrants, and
Right.
and they got a job with the airlines, and they don't want to upset.
Yeah.
It's like, why do I need a union? Well, it gives us a voice in the workplace. We all stick together. Well, my management told me I don't need it.
Right.
So I know, of course he's going to tell you that. And it's all about power. They don't, because a union gives the workers power in the workplace.
And
Yeah.
the company, of course, is.
The company's like, no, And to keep the union out, they keep the pay scale up comparable to union workers. You know what I'm saying? So there's never a wait a sec.
Right.
So the pay, the pay discrepancy isn't as great, because then right away people would say, geez, if I'm going to get a $5 raise, I want a union.
Right.
But the pay was always, so Delta's the same way. They're pretty comparable to all the different, like United and American, as far as their pay scale.
Oh, okay.
But the thing about Delta is doing is they hire in a lot of part-timers. So the worker works at the airport, works for Delta, but they never have enough time in to be eligible for benefits.
Right.
So you're a part-time employee, but you still need dental, you still need health insurance.
Right. Security, of course.
Right.
All that
That's a
good
big,
stuff.
it's a big issue.
So in your own opinion, where do you enjoy working? The MCLVC or Delta?
Delta, no, I enjoy this because I found myself as I was working at the airlines that I was getting more and more active in the union. And I enjoy this. I enjoy this very much, passing the word and doing solidarity and working with different unions and going to rallies and such. And, you just get older, the physical, the work at the airport is physical work. You're loading and unloading aircraft. And as you get older, you just can't do it anymore. As far as crawling in the bellies of planes,
Yeah.
I did that for years.
Oh, wow.
It hurt your knees after a while.
Oh, so you were physically.
Yeah,
You were
I was,
doing.
yeah.
You weren't just okay.
No, I was, and you got to do it. It's all about departure. The
Right.
plane goes out in a half hour. We gotta,
Right, you
you
gotta
gotta
get it
load it
done.
and get it ready. Oh, it really is. The operation itself is. It
Very
goes out at
structured.
5 past. It has to go out at 5 past.
Wow.
Because when you're flying.
Yeah, I've rode with Delta before. And
Have you? Yeah.
Yeah, they're very tight knit. I would
Yeah.
definitely recommend it, but I wouldn't guess that they're going through these things as workers.
Right. As workers, but the pay is good. Some of the guys who have been there a while,
Right.
and it's a lot of work. It's physical, right? Extremely physical. But some of the guys that I know from Northwest who became Delta workers, they got 34, 35 years in, 40 years. Some of the guys,
Wow.
and they've seen a lot of changes over the years, and. But they're still there. It's like, what are you gonna do? Hey, I've been doing this since I was a kid. And I'm still doing it, and getting ready to retire.
Thank you, Tom, for
My
being
pleasure.
with us, and thank you for watching.